Back to primary day, which was a wild one in New York City. Some results expected, some results some didn't see coming. Here to discuss it all is our panel of political experts, Chris Sommerfeld, Yvette Buckner, and Ben Mack. So great to have all three of you here. Let me begin kind of with this clean sweep for Mayor Zohran Mamdani. And this became a proxy war that people kind of talked about between the candidates that Mayor Zohran Mamdani had endorsed versus those that Kathy Hochul endorsed. Of course, Adriana Espizat was somebody that Kathy Hochul endorsed. Yvette, let me start with you and kind of talk about whether this was really a factor going into this, the proxy war of sorts, and Mamdani having this clean sweep.
Yes, it was a little bit of a proxy war, but I do feel like people are somewhat disconnected from Kathy Hochul here on the ground. Mamdani is such a presence, and we're talking about someone who was relatively unknown just 2 years ago, right? He was an assembly member from Queens. He was polling 1%, and not only was he's come out of, kind of obscurity and become almost the face of the Democratic Party right now. He's also brought someone along who people 6 weeks ago did not know their name. And if you think about it, that district in Harlem has been consolidated in the hands of 3 people for 80 years. Yeah. And for him to be able to bring that forward and get that person elected and win the primary, it's a huge feat. And so I think that this goes to Mamdani.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stations planned their debates and had 3 big races in mind, and all of a sudden, New York 13 came into play, and everyone was scrambling to get debates, including ourselves. Ben, what were you going to say?
I was just, Kathy Hochul as the governor has a huge amount of governmental power. She's not a huge political player. Yeah. This was more of a proxy battle between the left and the moderates, and the governor represents the moderates, and also more of this sort of establishment institutional player. She's closer with Hakeem Jeffries and others. So I saw it, of course, as a little bit more of the far left versus the more liberal establishment. And it does speak, though, to the governor's challenges politically, because she doesn't have the New York City base that an Andrew Cuomo had when he was governor, for example.
I think, too, one proxy war that's now starting to unfold because of this that maybe a lot of people weren't expecting is politicians like Letitia James now coming out and criticizing the mayor, which is a very uncomfortable position for the mayor to be in. Letitia James was an early ally of his, supported him early on in the mayoral race. Now she's taking issue with his endorsement in these primaries. That could portend something problematic for the mayor down the line.
Well, and I was also just talking to Brad Lander about Josh Gottheimer and what he had to say about DSA versus Democrats and how they may not fall under the category of Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries himself was like, well, the mayor's going to have some real conversations with some of these folks. The question I have really is now kind of looking ahead. Does the mayor get involved? Ben, I'll come to you on this one. In maybe other races now for the midterms, as he kind of extends his reach. If this was a litmus test, he won. They say, well, maybe I'll get involved in some races a little north of here in Westchester, the Mike Lawler, Kate Conley race, or so on and so forth.
Well, I think this is one of the most fascinating things. Mamdani is a star among Democrats, but a lot of that is playing within Democratic primaries.
Yes.
Is he invited to the 17th Congressional District to campaign with Kate Conley? I doubt it, but he is someone who can bring out the base, and this will be, listen, the governor just made this calculation, but she needs votes in New York City, so she endorsed him and then got his endorsement back. She wants his voters in the city, but I don't know if he's bringing people out to vote in swing districts.
Well, we're in unprecedented times, right? And affordability is on everybody's mind. And just the way, in 1932 when FDR did the New Deal, or in 2008 when Barack Obama talked about hope and change, people are feeling it. And I think Mamdani saying, you know what, it's time for a change. We did it in New York City. We can do it here too. Is going to go a long way and speak volumes.
And I do think every time you ask him about other states, he says, I'm focused on New York City.
They all say that.
To echo, they do all say that. They do all say that.
No, Bill de Blasio didn't say that. He was ready to, he was like, get me to Iowa.
I am inclined to agree with Ben, though, on the point that he's probably not going to go to New York 17 or other states.
He's definitely not going to be invited by Tom Suozzi to
I find that very hard to believe.
Absolutely not.
Right. I guess when you kind of look at this overall for New York 7, for example, right? Claire Valdez winning in this race against Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. What that means for the district, who came out to vote in that district, was the Commie Corridor, so on and so forth. But Reynoso really thought he had it, and there wasn't much difference between what they stood for. So, Claire Valdez winning was the Mamdani effect.
Yes, that is correct. It was the Mamdani effect, and what we're going to see, I think it's going to be duplicated, not just in New York, but you're going to see places in California and in, in New Hampshire that's going to try to duplicate that. Because again, taking people. You had power consolidated both with Nina Velasquez and with Adriana Espizat, and to have just in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, Mamdani to get them to be known across the country, not just here in New York City, across the country, I think that that's something to speak.
Can I just say, though, we did see DSA do this before Mamdani, so it's not just him. Now, without him, does DSA beat Velasquez and Reynoso in that coalition? Maybe not. But they have been winning races in a lot of these places. So yeah, it's
I don't know if it's in Congress, right? Because like it doesn't always translate. It translates on the ground locally, but not necessarily in the halls of Congress that are much slower.
All right, we saw some of that in Albany with these races as well.
Totally. I mean, you saw every single candidate that Mamdani endorsed on the state level win too, and you saw DSA pick up what are we up to now? Almost 6 seats in Albany. So Mamdani is clearly having a huge influence, though. I think also one thing that gets a little bit lost, while a lot of credit to Mamdani and the DSA and the kind of turnout machine they've been able to generate, we're also seeing such a dearth of turnout on the other end of the spectrum. Older voters, more moderate voters. They're just not coming out in those sort of numbers. So because there's such low turnout on that end, the DSA can capitalize on it.
I mean, think about New York 13, for example. That is a district of hundreds of thousands of people. And I think it was, I don't know what the final number was. It was low. It was a low voter turnout. But kind of talk about what this means for the party now overall, right? Because we're talking about how on the state level to Congress, you have the more progressive winners. But then you have somebody like a Josh Gottheimer saying, well, this isn't going to be representative of the party. So there is a bit of a divide going into the midterms now, Ben, on where they stand on the issues.
Well, one thing I'm fascinated by is you have someone like a Pat Ryan who kind of embraces the left. He's campaigned with AOC. He's in a swing district. And then you have someone like Tom Suozzi who's trying to say, start your own party, right? So that's an interesting debate for Democrats to have. I would, as a political analyst, lean towards why wouldn't you want more unity rather than disunity? But that's up to them to figure that out. But all of this is going to come out in the wash of, do they take the House majority and by what margin? And if it's a tight margin, then everybody's got power, right? So those DSA folks will have a lot of power if it's 3 or 4 of them to move the party left if it's a tight House majority.
If it's a tight House majority, they could maybe even block Hakeem Jeffries from becoming Speaker. It seems improbable, but these candidates, Claire Valdez and Avila Chevalier, they have not committed to backing Hakeem. And if it's a 2-3 member margin, no one knows.
We asked all of them that very question. So yes, thank you, Chris, Yvette, Ben, great to have